Good morning, and welcome to the kickoff of the SUNY Wellness Frameworks webinar series. This new series is designed to explore national and international models for advancing health and well-being, and to highlight how SUNY campuses are bringing these frameworks to life in their own communities. We are excited to begin with today's session, the Fireside Chat on Wellness and Higher Education. Our speakers are Valerie Grey, Senior Vice Chancellor for Health and Hospital Affairs at SUNY System Administration, and Dr. Kaushal Nanavati, Assistant Dean of Wellness, Chair of the Faculty Council, Director of Integrative Medicine and Survivorship at the Upstate Cancer Center, and Assistant Professor of Family Medicine at Upstate Medical University. Together, they will reflect on the meaning of wellness in higher education, the importance of frameworks to guide our work, and the opportunities ahead for SUNY. Throughout the webinar, please ask questions or leave comments through the chat or question and answer function. With that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Val Grey to begin our conversation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome. Boy, we've been talking about doing this for quite some time.
Absolutely.
Very excited about this morning. I would note there is a fireplace to go along with our fireside chat.
That's right.
And so, again, welcome. We're really happy to kick off the wellness series this morning. There will be time for questions from the audience. And we encourage you as we are going along to take some notes and ask us some questions a little bit later on. But I think maybe before we dive in, I just wanted to provide some background and set the stage a little bit. We are very fortunate in New York to have Chancellor King as our leader, a Governor Hochul, that is a strong supporter of SUNY, the legislature, tons of people across all of our campuses doing amazing things every day. And one of the things that we have been very committed to is student mental health and wellness. And over the last couple of years, we have been investing over $13 million a year in mental health services. And so, big picture, what has that meant? We've hired 120 more mental health staff across the SUNY system. We've got more than 20 new telecounseling contracts. We're continuing to support the SUNY statewide telepsychiatry network that SUNY Upstate runs. And we're launching things like mental health first aid training, a suicide prevention training module, and all of these really great things. But we've often stepped back and reflected a little bit about, okay, what else can we be doing to sort of prevent mental health challenges or to help mitigate or enhance resiliency? And so that's really what we wanted to focus on. And I would say, too, a big thank you, Dr. Nanavati, because I know that a lot of your leadership and your work on the University Faculty Senate. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
I did. Okay.
UFS,
it's
yes.
a mouthful. There was a resolution that was advanced as well that really encouraged the whole SUNY system to be focused a little bit more on wellness and going upstream, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think working upstream to affect downstream is really important because if you think about healthcare as a tree, the trunk is the problem or disease prevention. The branches are disease or problem treatment. The innovations are the leaves. Some become new branches, some fall by the wayside. But the roots are really wellness or health promotion. And so, when we think about preventing a problem, the thing is, when you talk about prevention, the word in front of it is still disease or problem. So it's problem-oriented thinking, right? And wellness and culture building are really about how to learn how to pave the smooth path, right? So it's a languaging that's proactive versus reactive. Preventive is avoiding the potholes, right? Proactive is teaching how to pave the smooth road and giving people the resources and tools so that they can know how to fish versus feeding the fish for the day, right? And that's really the transformation culture that we're looking to work on through SUNY being the largest public health education system in the U.S., I think if we can make this model work, it becomes a great model for the rest of the country, right, and beyond.
I couldn't agree more. That's a nice segue into my first question.
And there you go.
So I started at SUNY about 3 years or so ago. And when I first arrived, I remember you actually proactively called and introduced yourself and mentioned that you had written a short book. I think it was called Core 4 of Wellness. And I read that, and I thought it was really a good fundamental, stage setting. What is the Core 4? And why did you write the book?
So I wrote the book. I started writing the book when my son was 2. It was for him, kind of, pearls in life. And then as he got to be about 14, 15, my wife said, "Are you ever going to finish that book?" And she said, "If you do, I'll learn how to publish." And so we self-published. And again, the intention was to share insights on optimizing mind, body, spirit. So the core 4 are optimizing nutrition, physical activity and exercise and how they matter and help, stress management, right, and understanding what that is fundamentally, and then spiritual wellness, or one sense of contentment and peace. And so, I minored in philosophy in college, and so I've studied the Old Testament and the Bible and the Quran, the Hindu Gita, and Buddhism, and fundamentally they all come to a similar conclusion. And so for you guys out there, I'm going to give you the punchline and the bottom line in case you got to take a bathroom break, or you have another meeting to go to, or you're on 2 Zoom meetings at the same time. I know how this works. The bottom line with all of them was the word love. And here we are at SUNY Central, and I'm bringing up love, right, in an administrative setting. And yet it's not just love, because we tend to barter and negotiate with it. So the master key really to the whole thing is unconditional love, learning how to give it and how to receive it. And I'll give you a physiologic fact. The human heart beats 86,400 to 144,000 times a day. And every time the heart beats, it sends off blood, not knowing where it's going, not knowing what it's going to do, not even knowing if it's going to be received or not. It just keeps on giving unconditionally. And we use the symbol of the heart for love, right? Literally giving love unconditionally. And when that blood comes back, it doesn't know where it's been. It doesn't know what it's done. It doesn't care what shape it's in. Without judgment, it simply opens up, embraces it, nurtures it, and releases again. Literally receiving love unconditionally. And if our heart can do that 100,000 plus times a day, not only can we not, how can we not be the embodiment of that, but in systems design, how can we not keep that as a fundamental to how we build relationships, how we value, and you mentioned students. The other part of that equation is the faculty and staff and administration, right? Because every component, every spoke in the wheel matters for a smooth flow, right? And so as we design infrastructure, I think the point is we need to address each of the factors and acknowledge each of the subgroups to recognize that we value your role and that every one of us at the table, right, brings value. My uncle, when I was 8 one time, took my opinion at the dinner table, and I was the youngest of 7 growing up in a joint family, and everyone was like, "I can't believe he's asking for his opinion," right? All the older siblings, right? And he said, every seat at the table matters. And it's important to value every perspective to get the holistic picture.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, a lot of the work that we're going to be trying to do, and again, this is the kickoff for the Wellness webinar series, which is going to explore all sorts of frameworks that campuses could choose from. But there's sort of this individual component, and then, as you mentioned, the systems component, almost like how do we create a culture of wellness, right? And so, I'm sometimes, it's overused, I think, this whole, if there's trouble on a plane, I hate flying, but if there's trouble on a plane,
put your mask on.
Put your mask on first before you help other people. And so self-help really is key to being able to create this culture of wellness. So the core 4 sort of seems like, okay, those are the basic things you gotta take care of, and you gotta get right. One of those core 4 that you just mentioned was stress management. And, just yesterday we had a full-blown all-day team meeting, and we did a lot of talking about, some of the stressors, international conflicts, economic uncertainty, so much to do. And we went around the room. I asked everybody, what's one or two of your own coping mechanisms? And everyone was a little different, but there were some common themes. And so I'm curious, like, what coping mechanisms do you use, or what advice do you have for folks tuning in when they feel overwhelmed, or that, like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get through this?
Yeah, and so my kind of parallel to the mascot analogy is that a tree without roots provides very little shade, and that ties into my healthcare analogy. The rooting is that wellness promotion, and it means different things to different people at different stages in our life, right? Professionally and personally, right? So for stress management, the simple way to think about it is to just think about what are things I can do something about and what can I not control. And so I've had patients, over the last 30 years come to me with, I'm highly stressed and overwhelmed and anxious or depressed, et cetera. And then I'll have them make a list of all the things that are on their mind. One lady actually came in with 8 pages in a 15-minute, family doc visit. And I said, okay, make me 2 columns, right? Things I can do something about, things I can't control. And when she came back, 1 page was hers to own, right? So coming back to the practical, so reactions, right, are emotional and reflexive at times. And then when we actually pause to reflect, so it's kind of called the gap, right? It's the pause in between reaction and response. And that becomes our defining moment, right? So it's easy to give the emotional, reaction back. You see things happening in the world and we get emotional about them. And then what happens is our instinctive action sometimes may not serve our own greater good in the near future and long term, but it may not serve the greater good of the collective, right? And so if we pause to actually let the mud settle, we have clarity. And then what happens is we expend less energy to actually have a more effective outcome versus trying to splash around in muddied waters. And now what happens is there's no clarity for anybody, right? That's my kind of thought about it. But fundamentally, and I would love to know some of the common themes you guys came up with yesterday too.
Yeah, I would say, I was, one of the common themes, at least on our team as we went around the room, was reminding yourself what you're grateful for.
Vitamin G, right? That's what it's
Vitamin
called.
G, okay.
Yeah.
I have not heard that before.
Yeah, so there's it's other people have said it. One famous person, the wellness sphere, who said it, Bernie Melnick, who just retired as Chief Wellness Officer for Ohio State, she used to often talk about at Ohio State, it was, the G, vitamin G, which is gratitude. And the fact that when we, pause to be grateful for who we are and what we represent in the world, and then what the gifts that we have in our life, the people on our personal side, the people professionally that we work with, right? Our friendship, right? I got a big G for that one too, right? Because again, it's been organic over the years, and at the same time, we have people in this room right now who I'm grateful for because they're helping us get the message out, right? It doesn't have to be a big thing, right? You don't have to change the world to be grateful. It's this water, I'm grateful for that. It is that simple, but in that moment, cortisol went down, serotonin went up, and literally my physiology is getting affected by even proactively just expressing it. Right? It's not that hard. We forget.
All right. So I know you talk to so many people, and not just at Upstate, but our other campuses, a lot of national conferences. What are some of the trends that you're hearing? And like you just gave us some tips. Like what other self-help best practices are out there that our viewers should think about or explore a little bit more, that might be helpful?
So we'll definitely talk a little bit more about some pearls from the core 4 so people can take something back for themselves.
Okay.
But this is a very pertinent question to this entire journey that we're starting today. right? And so the literature, our CWO, who's my good friend Leslie Coleman at Upstate, Tate Shanafelt at Stanford, who's published a lot on this stuff. A lot of the leaders talk about the fact that 80% of it is organizational stuff when it comes to wellness, right? Procedures, policies, tone, etc., trainings, etc. And that 20% is the personal resiliency piece. And my statement to my friends and our discussion is always about the fact that even though 20% may be the personal resiliency, 80% of our resource should go to the 20%, because organizations are made up of people, and people come with life stories, right? And so it's important, one, I mean, even in this room, we're 5 of us right now, we don't all know each other's life story, right? But the minute we do, we get context for how people got to where they are, the decisions they make. And so one thing I would say that's very, very relevant, that isn't even published well, but it's actually next level thinking. So I'm a believer in evidence-guided practice, not necessarily evidence-based, because if you just stay in the box, there's so much more. But you start with the box, right? And so the box says, one, peer support is one of the most important things for wellness. Peer support groups at all levels. Students peer-to-peer, faculty peer-to-peer, right? Staff, administrators, leaders across the institutions, our 64 plus campuses, right? So that is one of the biggest evidence-guided tools that we can put as a part of our infrastructure in every environment, right? And, you know, new students coming in automatically getting connected with students that have been there, right? And then over time, they find their social groups and their interest groups and all of that, and they find other peers. But at least coming in, you're not walking in completely without a connection. Faculty, new faculty coming in, right? Staff coming in, administrators. You know, you can talk about CEO searches, et cetera. And the point is, when people come in or are looking to come in, to connect them. I had a great conversation last week where somebody is coming into a role, but the person there can't connect with them yet because they're not officially there, right? If you ask me, what kind of nonsense is that? Because frankly speaking, that personal connection relationship actually makes the transition that much smoother, right? Somebody has context as they're walking in versus walking in blind and now having to ramp up into context. That's kind of inefficient. The other piece is something called gross, okay?
Called what?
It's gross, right? Getting rid of stupid stuff, okay? It's actually a thing.
Okay.
We have it at Upstate. I just came from a national physician.
Oh, now I get it.
Yeah, I came from a national physician wellness conference. You get it, huh? Oh, it's so gross. And so at this national conference, there were major institutions presenting papers. And there was a major institution that presented that they handled like over 60-some gross topics that were submitted. So people can submit something they feel is a problem in process or inefficiency, et cetera. And then you have a team of people at the institution who will actually see what we can do to address it. You know, can we deal with this? Is this beyond, you know, what we can control? Is this a governmental policy, federal policy that we can't necessarily change here? But then how can we support you in the process, right? At Upstate, we've handled over 200 issues, right? And I think other campuses are doing some of this stuff as well, and maybe not calling it that. But those two specifics in all the literature are two fundamental, basic, easy, low-hanging fruit that we can initiate. And what it does is allows for input from the community, which means I see you, I hear you, and I want to help you, right? And we'll do our best. And if we can't, I'm going to give you a reason why. Not just a sorry, that can't happen, or this is the way it's always been. Because this is the way it always was based on the people that were here.
And it sort of feels like you could potentially get some momentum.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you pick some of the low-hanging fruit and you're able to address it or make things better, then the next thing, and then the next thing. You said Upstate got up to 200?
Over 200. We're at over 200.
So how, like, as you think about, like, the path to wellness, how does it look or feel? Do we ever get done? Or, like, what's progress?
You're making me smile. Okay. So I've actually started to talk to students about this thing I call good, best, better, which is the idea that best is a defined endpoint. better is infinite. And I actually borrowed this from several elite performers. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Roger Federer.
I haven't heard of any of
No,
those
not
guys.
at all.
Well,
Yeah.
Roger Federer.
That's right. And then
big
I
tennis fan.
tend to, with my students, I joke in my family, I call it kind of that triumvirate of Kobe, Jordan, and the K-Daddy, which is my street name, which you know a little bit about. And so,
Are we going to have enough time for you to sing later?
we may have to
Okay.
talk about that, right? A little lean on me at the end.
Okay.
But fundamentally, the point is that these elite performers never were worried about being the best or comparing to the other. Their goal was to be better from within, right? And if they started the day and ended the day better than where they were, if that was the goal every single day, that was progress, right? So when we think about infrastructure, so I think one of the most important things we can do at our institutions or as a collective, right? Because again, when you have limited resource, which we do as a state institution, we can do shared best practices, but also by having centers of excellence that can then support the entirety. Like you mentioned, our mental health program and how it supports over 60 of the campuses for SUNY, right? We have other campuses that have expertise and domains. We don't need 64 micro cells. What we can do is go deeper if we pool resources for the collective, right? So with wellness and well-being, I think it is important to have wellness champions at our institutions, whether in the form of a CWO, a Dean of Wellness, or whatever capacity that the campus can accommodate, right? So that there are people who are focused on this optic for the institution and understand the local culture, because we're not all the same, right? And so we really want to recognize that we want to create infrastructure that can adapt to the local environment while having core content that's available to all, right? And I think that's the way we create efficient models over time that still say, I see you and your need, and you guys have this need, you guys have this need, right? A Fredonia versus a New Paltz versus a Buffalo, right? Different size, different locale, different local resource for support. And then SUNY Central has an opportunity to lean on Upstate for these things, Downstate for these things, the Stony Brook for these things from the health sector. But then we also have, the other campuses and the excellence that they provide for culture, philosophy, right? And multiple different ways that all of us can be better versus silofying, which I don't think that's the progressive model at all.
Yeah. I often hear the word systemness.
Yeah.
Right? And that we really should be thinking about how we can leverage all of our assets together.
But think about the human body. That's what it's doing, right? We have organ systems that cooperate.
Yeah.
When you and I eat, the gut needs more flow. So all the other organs say, I'm going to chill for a little while, right? I'm going to go to 80% and give the flow to the gut. And then after a couple of hours, when the gut's done its thing, it actually gives the flow back. It's not holding on to. And the liver doesn't want to be the kidney, because if it did, we'd have big problems, right? So people are actually contented and also valued appropriately. And that's the other piece, is from the leadership side, acknowledging and valuing people. And it's not always about the dollars and cents, right? Some people may have personal wealth and they're still a faculty teaching English that's making, $80,000 or $70,000 or whatever the income range is for them. And so they might not need the money, but they may want more training, right? I think one of the other keys, and this is one of my things for SUNY that I would love to champion over time, HR, benefits, right? Wellness and benefits have a big overlap, right? And if we have a benefits model that's static, then what happens is people come into a system and this is what you get, this is who we are. And yet when I'm single, I might want more time to travel. Or I'm single and young and I want to double down on my retirement early and I want to put more in that. And I might give up a week of vacation to be able to do that, right? So if we say that the bucket has this value monetarily, but within that, we can flex to your need. And periodically you can adjust, right? So somebody with young children who wants to go to the after-school events, we can help you with that. Mm-hmm. Colleges where summers are not classroom, they might not need more time. That's not the thing, because they have some flexibility, but they may want more training. Can we get creative where we're not adding a financial burden that we can't sustain, but I see you, I value you, and in this moment, I want you to have what you need to thrive in this environment because that's what we're about, right?
Yeah. I want to think a little bit more and maybe drill down a little bit more on the student aspect
Yes.
of this, right? Because we've got hundreds of thousands of students at our different campuses. You know, and the statistics show that, you know, there's a lot of prevalence of anxiety, depression, things like that. As we move upstream to, you know, address downstream, to use your words, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about in terms of supporting students? I know one of the things I've heard some of the campuses are doing is really trying to get people to go outside, you know, where there's nature. And to your earlier point, that it doesn't always have to cost a lot of money to do things that really help us thrive.
I think there was a gentleman who was Hungarian who had said that genius can be cultivated. It's not just a genetic thing. And so he, with his family, had actually done something where he put an ad in the paper, you know, wife wanted for an educational experiment, okay?
Wait, what did it say?
Wife wanted for educational experiment was the ad he had put. This was like, I think in the 50s or maybe around that time. And so a Ukrainian lady actually addressed the ad, and they got married and they had 3 children. And what they did, from the first daughter was 4, and she was playing chess for 5 hours a day, okay? And then the second came and the third came. They picked chess because it has some objective measures they could assess, which we'll talk about our objective measures later as well. So all 3 children became like world champions. The youngest daughter became a grandmaster at like 15 and beat Bobby Fischer's record and all this stuff. And the way they approached it was that it was a proactively positive environment, right? So again, in culture building, setting the expectation up front, I call it rules of engagement in relationships. If they're not overtly expressed, then assumptions are made. And then silent expectations are had. And that's the potential for disappointment, dejection, depression, anxiety, fear, uncertainty, right? And so as a system and as faculty, and even for our faculty and for our leaders, overt expression of here's the tone in our home, which is this is a joyful environment of learning, right? You're not going to know everything when you walk in. You won't know everything when you walk out. However, during your time of learning, what we encourage is curiosity. We encourage you trying things, right, proactively, with the potential that as long as you're learning, it's not a failure, right? And that feedback is not criticism, it's opportunity to grow. And if we don't give that, you know, how many athletes, even the Jordan, Kobe, and Federers of the world, they had coaches who are helping them be better by pointing out where they could be better, right? So we have a culture that from elementary school onwards, failure is bad, right? And the point is not knowing, and knowing what you don't know is actually wisdom, so you can build on it. That was a Confucius thing, right? And so we have to change the culture that way, which is to say, you know, you're going to come here, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to get everything right. You won't pass every test, maybe, right? And if you don't, we're going to support you in your growth versus we're going to criticize your failed potential, right? That's a mindset shift that students, because a lot of the student stress is what? I'm not good enough. Imposter syndrome, right? Oh my God, what will happen if? I've got a huge debt load, and now if I fail, what am I going to do? Plus the personal stuff of our students have families. They have children, right? They have other responsibilities because SUNY embraces, you know, generational education, right? So if we're doing that, again, if we're not overtly expressing that I see you and we're here to support your growth, but that don't be stuck to a timeline that society has put out there, because life happens, right? So even the expectation you had walking in, leave it at the door so you can actually embrace the learning that's happening now.
Your reference to failure also reminded me that you know, you've had a journey yourself.
I have.
And I think you told me at one point in time that, you know, you learned from some failures.
I'm happy to share.
Yeah,
you know.
I would share it. I can think of failures I've
Yeah.
had
So this
that
is
really
actually,
just helped me get better.
yeah, I think this is a great point. I will share it because this is part of sharing life stories, right? So I remember my last 2 interviews in high school. I'm an immigrant. I was 7 when we came to Rochester. Went to the city school districts, a product of the state education system. Proud to
too.
say that. And my last 2 interviews for college were Harvard and the 6-year medical program at RPI and Albany Med. And the Harvard, interviewer asked me, if you get into both, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to go to the 6-year medical program. I want to be a doctor. I get 2 years out of college. I don't have to take the MCATs, and you guys aren't guaranteeing me medicine, right? And needless to say, I didn't get into Harvard. I got into the 6-year program. And my second semester, I went through some stuff and ended up with 4 Ds and an F, right? And the lesson I learned was I didn't know to ask for help. I didn't think I needed to because I was like, I'll figure it out in the finals. I'll figure it out. And I think asking for help early is actually wisdom. Now when I go to the grocery store, I go straight to the service desk to know where things are because they move it around every 3 months, right? So that way I'm not wasting my time, but I'm getting help early, right? And I ended up out of that program, went to St. George's University, got a world education, and now, having failed out of an American med school, basically, I get to be a dean at an American med school, right? And so the journey still continues. And when our goals are more clear to us, we find a way, right? And what's thought to be a roadblock, right, is actually opportunity to grow in a different way. I wouldn't have minored in African American literature. I wouldn't have minored in philosophy had I gone the straight path. And so as I was telling you before we started, the universe is always right. Often we learn that in hindsight, right? And so valuing those experiences as growth. I mean, humility, I didn't have as much before. I've never not had it since, right? I don't judge. Before I couldn't figure out how people failed. I was like, you just work harder and you're fine, right? You must be doing something wrong. Now what I realize is circumstance can impact anybody at any time. And so giving grace along with gratitude, right? Those two work wonderfully well to support and nurture growth. I think for students, peer support is still the number one thing that even through the mental health stressors that people have, I think it's important. I think curricular components are really essential, that we make this a part of our languaging. Is positive psychology is something we can train, because that helps with coping mechanisms when you do feel stress or distress, is how am I going to approach this, right? And where do I get the resources? So overtly sharing resources on each campus, people should know about them. Most of our people don't know where the resources are. Our web presence, right? I mean, in this current technology era, how are our websites? How good are we at people being, does it take 10 clicks or can I get there in 2, right? Those are like the practical, real, on the ground things that we should be exploring, so that it's not that we don't have the resource, it's available 24/7, and we can partner with resources that are national, that we don't have to necessarily recreate if they have the capacity to support our students.
So we did sort of touch on this idea of how will we know we're getting it right?
Yeah.
And how do you measure progress as we go through the wellness journey as a system, and knowing every campus is going to be at different places. And really the whole point of this webinar series that we're kicking off is to provide different options. But as campuses reflect and think about what are the options that are best for our campus, I always feel like it's always best to know in the back of your head, what is your overarching goal, and how will you know? Or is it just a feeling? Is there data? Is there feelings? How are we going to sort of organize ourselves around wellness across the whole system?
So the answer to you, Val, is yes to everything you've said, right? And I'm teasing all of you guys as well, right? So fundamentally, when we think about it, I believe, right, that the only thing you need in life are contentment and peace, and that everything else is a want. And if your wants take away from your sense of contentment and peace, think about where your priorities lie, right? So if you want the overarching theme, that's what we're talking about, fueled with unconditional love. So an environment where people feel seen, welcomed, right? And that's leadership, walking the walk. Because too often in my 15-year career at SUNY and my 30 years in family medicine, too often what I've been told is, that's your stuff. This is not my stuff.
Oh, it takes a village. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Everybody's
right? And
gotta-
more importantly, this culture, you know, so if a leader says, well, you know, we just need to put this, you know, we need to do something, so we need somebody to be assigned, but we don't really have resource, but, you know, figure it out, that's not going to get us to goal, right? So what I think about is this. There are validated questionnaires that actually focus on wellness, right? And I actually have to give props again to our CWO, Leslie Coleman, who's been in the SUNY system for over 4 decades. Infrastructure, setup, establishment. Because generations change. People will come and go. So even when we do questionnaires from year to year, for us to compare when it's not the same people who are answering the questions, that makes it difficult in the world of evidence and data. However, over time, we can assess where we're going, right? And so if a point in time is a point in time, 2 points make a line, 3 points make a trend, the point is some metric that we can consistently measure, both the distress side, the burnout, the male well-being index is what we use at Upstate, and it gives us a lot of feedback on what are the resources people are going to when they have stress, so that we can double down on supporting that side of the equation. And then, are they feeling like over time the same people are feeling better in that environment, right? It's not that you're feeling the best ever, that this is perfect. As you said, and I'll say it in the British accent, progress, right? Progress. So progress, not perfection, right? I'm not worried about the perfection. I'm not planning on getting it right. I call myself perfectly imperfect. We're going to keep trying and getting feedback and adjusting, adapting to current generation, which every 3 years it changes. So in fact, our leadership should get training in generational awareness every 3 to 5 years, because you know what? The world has changed. Your recipient and their goals and their expectations, their language is different. If you're no longer speaking their language, you're going to miss the mark, right? And so I call, my son actually has been one of my biggest mentors, right? Having generation mentors who are also coming up, not just the people ahead of us, helps us to have greater awareness. If you want to do 360 perspective, it's both sides of it.
Let's see. I want to make sure we leave time for questions. Okay, I'm going to only ask another one or maybe two. So, what are how about one practical step that students or staff or faculty could take that we know it might be a small thing, but it contributes to the greater good and to wellness more generally? You've kind of already woven a bunch into this conversation, so this is like, do you got one more?
Oh, I got pearls. Oh, y'all got some time? Because I'm going to hook you up, right? So that's the K-Daddy in me coming out. So live by the sevens is for personal resiliency, right, is what I call it. At least 7 servings of vegetables a day. The science is very clear that 7+ servings reduces the risk of cancer, cardiovascular disease, all-cause mortality. Within that, the cruciferous vegetables have actually shown potential to slow down development of plaque and potentially even reverse. So eating healthy, right, and healthy nutrition.
And what kind of vegetables are those?
So crucifers are like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, spinach,
All the
Brussels
green
sprouts,
stuff.
asparagus, arugula, right? So at Upstate, I'm known as the broccoli guy. People literally stop me and say, hey, I had my broccoli today. I'm like, it's great, good for you, right? So 7, then 7 hours of exercise a week. Physical activity and exercise, besides having benefit for things like avoiding, reducing recurrence of cancer, cardiovascular health, all of that, for stress are fantastic as a release, right? And moderate intense means going hard enough that you can speak in small sentences, and that's variable for each of us depending on the day, right? And then 7 hours of sleep a night, which again, depending on stage in life, and as students, that's always a tougher one. But the other part of it is mindfulness, and that's a word, again, that gets kind of marginalized, right? That, oh, that's the soft stuff. Well, as we know in the world we're in, even the corporate world, emotional intelligence and the soft skills are actually recognized as being more valuable for the long-term value, right? And so 10 minutes of abdominal breathing, I'll show it to you guys. When you breathe in, the belly puffs out like a balloon. When you breathe out, it gently comes in. But 10 minutes, this was published 10 years ago, cortisol goes down to the point of lowering the blood pressure by 5 to 10 points. And it's not a chest breath, it's a belly breath. Thanks for the demonstration. I appreciate it, right? So I like to tease my friends, right? This is my sister from another mother, so we tease, right? Then serotonin goes up. Well, that's mood and our mind. But that actually helps our digestion. Dopamine goes up, right? So get doped up the right way, right? And then adrenaline, the fight, flight, or freeze, calm right down. So mind, body, and spirit. What you fuel here fuels the body, right? What you hold on to here fuels the mind, right? And 3 months ago, a study showed that at 90 seconds, the brain reduces the intensity of any emotion. So the only reason you're stuck in there is because you keep relighting the fire. So if you feel angry or frustrated right now, you're like, when's this guy going to stop talking, right? Whatever it is, at 90 seconds, your brain's going to actually help calm that feeling down. So acknowledge it, right? And we should acknowledge the reality of the day. And then recognize that this too shall pass. So let me focus on building the joy, right? If you're the lighthouse, then others may be able to find their way, right? If you're out to sea without a paddle with the people that are out to sea without a paddle, now nobody's getting back. So the best thing we can do is be the light. Students can learn to be the light, and actually peer coaching is another great tool where if students learn to be coaches, right? Now, not only do they have the awareness, but they have the skills to help others, but in the process, they're helping themselves, right? And that's a great way that we can embed this, where we're not only you're not gonna just become, a philosophy major and leave here with that degree. You're also gonna understand skill sets on how to engage with people. As Bishop Desmond Tutu talks about Ubuntu, right? My humanity is bound up in yours, right? I wouldn't know how to be human without relationship. And so that really is an important fundamental string as well. It was more than one thing, but I figured I'd share.
No, I like it. I like it. And I've been trying to be a little bit more aware myself. Like when I go in with a positive attitude on something, or I do something unexpected for someone else that's just like randomly nice.
Yeah.
It makes me feel better too.
It's true.
It's not just helping the person that you've focused on for that moment, but it's also fills it. I use words that you use: joy, love,
That's
peace, right? So it's kind of a full circle.
It is, and a smile works both ways, right? For the giver and the recipient. And even when you fake a smile, cortisol goes down, serotonin goes up.
Even when you fake it.
Even when you fake it. So one thing in life, we're fake it till you make it work, guys. So smile right now. I don't see you, but I can sense that smile. There you, I see that smile.
And this one's real.
That is real. That's good.
All right, I'm going to do a time check. All right, Julie, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we have one thus far, and the question is, Dr. Nanavati, you mentioned that 80% of wellness is organizational and based in policies. What efforts would you implement or change in order to create a proactively positive environment for faculty and staff, respectively?
I think one of the important things, and I'm actually now chair of our faculty council at Upstate, is it's very interesting that in the legislative branch, faculty council, all of the positions are volunteer, and then the executive branch is not, right? And so again, how we value people matters. I think the other point is proactive engagement and encouragement from leadership to actually have people submit suggestions in a way where, one, anonymity matters, because otherwise people feel like, you know what, their job could be at stake if their name is known. Fundamentally, you want to take away the fear so people actually express, right? And I think one of the most important, policy dictates behavior, which dictates culture, right? So
Can you say that again? For
policy dictates behavior, which dictates culture over time, right? And so we really need to look at policies, and we always say current, but usually policies are set from the past. And generations, as I mentioned, change, right? So I think getting younger colleagues, or younger in terms of newer to the institutions, to be more engaged up front is really important. I also think setting some kind of time limits on people in position of authority, because otherwise we don't transition culture. So what happens is when people are seated in a position for 15, 20, 30 years as chairs, generations change. Plus, then the people coming in they have a ceiling, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to get there because this person's going to be there, right? So I think helping every level see the potential for their own growth based on their own sense of purpose matters. I think volunteerism is very important so that we get people engaged in community, because purposeful engagement leads to greater fulfillment, right? And so even as a part of our culture and as we set policies moving forward, to have people not with an expectation, but with the potential gift that they can engage with their message in a community that's hungry. I heard a great quote, and this will actually answer this question, just like a month ago. Show your true self so that the people who've been looking for you can actually find you. And that hit me hard, and I do this stuff all the time. The people who've been looking for you, right? For all of us, there are people who've been looking, but we have our masks on, right? Take that mask off and you'll be amazed at how much of a gift you can be to somebody and how much connection you'll feel in the process when you're genuine in the space. So with policy, I think the most important thing is we need to actively get people from all levels of the institution to engage collectively so that we can get the right input for a comprehensive assessment versus the same people coming to the same things, and now we have a very limited scope on the greater issues.
Great. We have a couple more questions. Next question is, how do you see wellness frameworks shaping the future of higher ed at SUNY?
I see this as the founding cornerstone. Thank you very much for asking that question. I think the culture of wellness, the culture of well-being, again, wellness is more organizational stuff. Well-being can be the things that people do to engender their own mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, all the domains that you guys are going to talk about. This is the fundamental tenet upon which SUNY has to move forward. I don't see any other way to create the greater version of what SUNY already is doing. I think we have a great leadership team in place, not only at SUNY Central. I know at Upstate, I'm very proud of the leadership we have. At several of our institutions, the leaders are proactive in wanting to engage, and I think we have models already at some of our institutions and even around the world where there are some fundamental cornerstones that are common that we can put into place, right? And it may be with certain roles designated, so overtly we're saying we definitely believe in this. And then the second is really offering people an opportunity to engage, having a council, a well-being council that anyone from the institution can join at all of our institutions can be a first simple step that doesn't require money, right? So not everything is about the money. It's showing that this matters from leadership across. I don't say top down, it's across, right? But in that process, we're going to get much further. And so this has to be SUNY equals health, wellness, and well-being. Those are the three words I like to use.
Next question is, what impact do you think intentionally teaching mindfulness practices to students, staff, and faculty could have on campus culture and student retention?
Incredible, right? I'll say it will make us better because that's an infinite thing, right? So when you think about mindfulness, again, I will say this. So there are some medical caveats, right? When somebody is severely depressed or has severe anxiety, to have them go sit by themselves and do some deep breathing or meditate may actually be more potentially risky. But doing it in classroom settings, right, as a consistent thing, not just before a test, so it becomes a natural tone, this idea of mindfulness, of bringing your mind here, actually improves attention, retention, right, the value of the experience in the moment itself. So this is good for faculty. This is good before and after any meetings that we have. We both sat here a little bit quietly before we started, just kind of collecting our thoughts, but allowing things to settle, right? And so mindfulness, if anything else, is simply about just being here now, right? And when we practice that, what happens is The other also recognizes that we're actually here for them and with them, and so that they're not by themselves in a room full of people, right? That's how it helps.
So we've got a couple more questions.
I love it. Thank you.
Next question is, what is the wellness index you use at Upstate?
So it's called the Mayo Wellbeing Index. It's a well-vetted, validated questionnaire that takes anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and we've had it since I think about 2018. So we have data over time of utilization. Again, even we know we can be better with utilizing it. So people talk about survey fatigue, and another survey. But frankly, I have to push back on that, which is to say, again, when you're training in sports, if you're not getting feedback and assessing how you can improve, how are you going to get there, right? So while we say, another survey, people are fatigued out with that stuff, the point is this is part of our responsibility to ourselves, right? To assess where we are in relation to where we want to be, and then what are the adjustments we need to make to get there so that if there is a roadblock, if there is a stumble, then we can pick ourselves back up, dust ourselves off, and now we reset our calibration, right?
Great. And I think this will be our last question. How can leaders from different areas, such as student affairs, academics, and health services, collaborate under a framework?
I think in the same room, honestly. And so in a framework where you have opportunity for all of these different voices to be together is essential because the perspective is so unique. And none of us have the 360 overview. The Chancellor doesn't, Val doesn't, I don't, these guys sitting here in this room, because we all come from our own perch and our own perspective. And so I know I have blind spots, right? On my personal life, my wife is great at not only pointing them out, but helping me through them, right? And so I think the best thing we do for all these perspectives, which are all essential, is actually have them have opportunity to connect through some kind of a council, committee, some, fireside time, right? A town hall, if you want to call it that, where people can actually express without this fear of repercussion or reprisal. The point is, we need that input, right? And because generations change, as we continue to be consistent, so as our man Denzel Washington says, discipline and consistency, right? You don't just do a one-off. You do it consistently so that you can get more input, and over time, the threads reveal themselves, right? Versus, we did it in 1998. That was good, right? But what is that, right?
Yeah.
Just to check a box? No. Right?
This has been great. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Right?
It does seem like, Julie, this would be a great time to do a little infomercial on the rest of the webinar series and some of the different frameworks and the speakers that we're going to have.
Yes. So thank you, Val and Dr. Nanavati, for sharing your insights and reflections today. This conversation is just the beginning of our SUNY Wellness Frameworks webinar series. We look forward to continuing this learning journey together in the weeks and months ahead as we explore a variety of wellness frameworks, such as the 8 dimensions of wellness, the Healthy Campus Framework, and the Okanagan Charter led by SUNY experts across the system. We encourage you to stay connected, register for the upcoming sessions, and bring these conversations back to your campus communities. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the next session, which will focus on the 8 dimensions of wellness.
And before we leave, were you giving me the sign you wanted to sing?
Yeah, last little pearl, right? So if I do get to do a mic drop kind of a thing, what I'll say is this: 2 words that I want people to take away with them and to share with their students: empathy and compassion. And the point is, empathy is kind of owning the weight of the other's problem on your own shoulders, right? Compassion is walking alongside them, supporting them as they resolve it. And so what I tell people often is, and one of my friends actually I used to say compassion always, empathy very selectively, because it can get very heavy, right? However, if you think about any relation you have, or if you're as a leader talking to your faculty with students, or students, empathy up front helps you to know the depth of their problem, how deep they're feeling it. And then kind of converting to compassion so that you can support them through it without taking that home with you. because otherwise it gets very heavy for all of us as leaders as well, right? So this is just one pearl that can emotionally and mentally and spiritually help you through the objectives that you have set for yourself, so that you don't get burnt out when you start to feel this less sense of inability to accomplish the goal, loss of autonomy, all of those things that define burnout. Is be self-compassionate as well, right? So know the depth of your problems, but then give compassion. Consider yourself perfectly imperfect, and you may not get it right always, but lean into your intention, which is to leave it better than what we found. And that's all I can say.
That's a great last pearl, at least for this morning. There'll be many other pearls to come.
That's right.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us, and a huge thank you.
My pleasure.
Very grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you.